everyone, Stephanie Slaughter, aka Slaughter Me here. Today we're going to be talking about the dirty, infamous Guinea Pig series. If you haven't heard this series just yet, it is a kind of cult talked about 80s Japanese film series in which is supposed to have some of the goriest, bloodiest, just most offensive pieces you have ever seen. So if you're on the fence of taking the time to even dive into any of these movies, let's take a quick recap of what I thought of the films and let you decide from there. So the first film in the series, which set off the Guinea Pig title, is literally called Guinea Pig, which also is called The Devil's Experiment. Basically, the movie is about this girl who is basically getting tortured by these three guys. That's it. It goes through 9 different steps of how she gets tortured, and I really didn't think it was that great of a film. I mean, I could understand the controversy with 3 guys torturing a girl. I mean, it did have a pretty scary discussion of this being an experimental tape and kind of setting an urban legend of this could be a real thing, but other than that, it wasn't all that great. The second film on the list is Flower of Flesh and Blood, and this is the one you've probably heard of the most. This is the one that is the most, is one of the bloodier ones on the film list, and it does have a comedic undertone, in my opinion, behind the movie. The movie is basically another 45-minute film. All of them are 45 minutes, by the way. It's a short film about this guy who captures a girl, and he basically dismembers her. And that is the premise of the movie. The comedic undertone, though, that comes in is that he injects her with this kind of ecstasy kind of drug, and so he's going step by step through the dismemberment and how it's very, each limb is just like a whole different level of pleasure for her, as he's also in a samurai suit, which, okay, maybe for some people that isn't funny. It's more so twisted than anything, but I mean, it's a samurai. It's a Japanese samurai just dismembering someone, or dismembering a girl for pleasure. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just fucked up, but it is very graphic, and I do love the graphicness of this film, as weird as that sounds. I love the sounds of just of the dismemberment, the tearing at the bones and stuff like that. If you are weak, or if you have a weak stomach, this is not the film for you. The ending is just creepy. He adds her to his collection while singing this slow, creepy song. I'll have to play a clip so you guys can kind of see how creepy it is, because I can't really show any other clips of this movie because of just the gore content, but you gotta hear the song. But this film was definitely one of my favorites out of them. I don't think that it needed an American remake. I have not seen the American Guinea Pig just yet. I'm not really into torture porn. I did see Flower of Flesh and Blood initially when I was 19, so that was literally like one of the goriest movies I've ever seen at that age. But I mean, even as an adult, I found this funny. Would not want to see a remake of this or any kind of other kind of gore porn, to be honest. Starting to like storylines now. Guess that's what happens with age. Third movie installment is called He Never Dies. This movie was very comedy inspired. It does have gore in it, but it's literally about this guy, a computer programmer. Poor nerds. We all just get stepped on. And that's kind of what the film's about. It's about this computer nerd who gets stepped on at work. No one appreciates him. He literally misses work for 4 days. No one gives a fuck. No one calls him. He ends up calling a friend, and they let him know that. And he's just like, you know what? I'm off myself. This poor guy can't even he can't even kill himself. Not allowed. not allowed. So that is basically the premise of the movie, and he tries to cut his wrists open and yada yada yada. It's not that interesting. It has some kind of comedic value to a certain extent. There's a part where he cuts open his stomach and throws it at his coworker and just scares the fuck out of his coworker. But other than that, it wasn't that great. The fourth movie installment is A Mermaid and a Manhole. This movie is probably one of the grossest movies I have ever seen in my whole entire life, as well as just being a very good story. I enjoyed the story a little bit more than what I ever anticipated. So the premise of the movie is about this lonely painter who has lost his wife, and basically he goes down to a sewer where he finds a lot of his inspiration. One day he stumbles across a mermaid. Go figure. Maybe this is the manhole. But he finds a mermaid and perfect specimen for him to paint, and she's totally about it. Goes there day by day, and eventually it gets to the point where she's bleeding to death. So he decides that he's going to take her home and paint her there, in which she kind of provokes anyways, or kind of instigates anyways. You don't see mermaids every day rotting into colorful paint on top of just non-stop convulsing to the point where they're puking worms and worms are eating through their bodies. I mean, I'm sorry, it blew my mind a little bit. I don't see that every day. And just the worm part, really, it got to me. It made me a little, ugh. Which doesn't happen often in films. But there is a plot twist at the end. I don't want to say what it is, but it was one of those things where I had to rewatch the beginning because I was like, wait a minute, I thought that bitch died, and yeah, so that kind of gave me some of the hint. But I really did enjoy that film. If anything, so far, Flower, Flesh and Blood, yes. Mermaid and Manhole, yes. And then there's the fifth movie, Android of Notre Dame. I really wasn't a fan of this movie at all. It literally took me 4 tries, if not more, I don't know, to complete this film. It was really boring. With it being only a 45-minute film, getting to the 20-minute mark where things like start actually happening, it was like pulling teeth for some reason. So the premise of the movie is basically about this midget scientist trying to find a cure for his sister who has cancer, which in retrospect does sound intriguing, but he ends up getting a droid from this random person, and it could potentially help find the cure for his sister, and it doesn't, so he ends up taking revenge. That's it. There was some bloody parts, or there was some pretty graphic parts near the very end, but it was just flat out boring. Even when I did find myself going through the movie, it was one of those things where it's just like, I'm gonna fast forward it. Wait, what did I miss? Fuck. I'm gonna fast forward. Oh, fuck. But even then, when I would go back, it was just kind of like, oh, I could have went on not seeing that. I could have went on not seeing the whole 45 minutes, but that's okay. But I'd skip this one, if anything. And then comes the last movie on the list, which was my ultimate favorite, which was Devil Woman Doctor. I don't know why so many people hated this film. The whole series was never serious, so I don't know why so many people are offended that Devil Woman Doctor was very comedic. Some of the reviews I read were kind of angry that it was kind of a sketch comedy. Some people labeled it as a poor attempt at SNL, or just a shittier version of Monty Python, but it was literally a sketch comedy of B-rated fun. And if you don't like B-rated horror or comedy or anything like that, you probably shouldn't be watching any of this, to be honest. It's a cult film, so I don't know exactly what they were anticipating. I mean, the beginning scene of Devil Woman Doctor is literally a cross-dresser, which surprised me. I thought she was just a small-breasted woman like myself who was just fabulous, but hey, what did I know? But the beginning scene is literally her cutting open a doll and blood splattering all over the place, and then the title screen, which I thought was amazing. I was just like, yes! And she goes on to tell that this movie is about her what she does as like a doctor and the type of patients she comes across. And it's a 9-piece sketch, but I enjoyed every minute of it. And keep in mind, it's 45 minutes long, so with each sketch, it makes the movie go by so fast. And all the little bits were completely different from each other. Yes, they were utterly silly, but a lot of it was gore-filled and just, it was fun. It's one of those movies that get kind of shoved under the rug, possibly because not a lot of people had taken the time to watch the whole series, but if you enjoy any kind of trauma films, or movies like Basket Case, or Dead Alive, or Bad Taste, for God's sake, you would love this film. One of the bits is literally about her talking to this family who has a condition in which if they get too upset, their heads explode. What happens? Their fucking heads explode. I mean, I don't know who was watching this movie and got just super offended that it was silly, but how is that not funny? I mean, maybe I have a shitty sense of humor. I mean, there is poop jokes in it at the very end. There's a wiener joke at the end. Maybe I'm just have 5-year-old humor. I don't know. It was fucking hilarious to me. There's a zombie bit of where this guy is just living his normal life as a zombie, kind of like bummed out, but just kind of dealing with it, just everyday life, which I thought was funny. There's another bit where she has a client who wants a tattoo taken off of him, but the tattoo for whatever reason is just moving all over his body, so she ends up slowly just taking off all the skin. It's kind of like a cartoon to me, but in just like live action form. I have no idea why it was so, this particular movie was so frowned upon in regards to the reviews I read amongst the other movies that were on here. I mean, if anything, I think that The Android of Notre Dame should have never been on there. And I could have lived not seeing He Never Dies, or the first movie, The Guinea Pig. Like, those movies over this one had no value, you know. This movie actually was funny. It had gore in it, of course. I loved the Devil Woman Doctor. I thought she was fucking hilarious. And it was just pure B-rated silliness. I mean, if anything, Flower, Flesh, and Blood. See that. Rated Manhole. See that. Devil Woman Doctor. See that one. So, out of the 5 movies, see those 3. So, that wraps up today's video. Have any of you guys seen any of the movies mentioned? If so, let me know in the comments below. Or if anything does sound intriguing, or you're about to watch any of these films, please tag me on Instagram or mention me in the comments or something like that. I would love to see more people engage in these kind of like bucket list films. And we'll see you guys